okviru našeg projekta u fokusu, kojim ujedno započinjemo i bogatu nedelju kulture u našoj instituciji, o čemu ću dakako vas kasnije pred kraj ove večeri podsjetiti. A pre uvoda i pre razgovora sa našom današnjom gošćom pozivam magistra Nenada Šapunju, direktora naše institucije, da se obrati.
Dragi prijatelji, Bai Lin, dobrodošla u našu ustanovu, dobrodošla u Novi Sad. Nama je izuzetna čast i zadovoljstvo da imamo u Kulturnom centru Vojvodine Milu Crnjanski gosta iz Kine, naše prijateljske zemlje. Bai Lin je osoba koja je, nećete verovati, napisala jednu knjigu o Jugoslaviji, o našoj bivšoj zemlji. Piše još jednu, ona je obišla sve delove te bivše zemlje. Ja sam inače upoznao u Pekingu, više puta smo se videli u Beogradu i ona je obilazila ove naše krajeve još pre korone i pokušava da vidi ono što mi jesmo. Na način na koji je to možda 30. godina prošlog veka Rebeka West obilazila bivšu Jugoslaviju i otkrivala ono što je bila ta zemlja. Ja se nadam da će, kao što je Kina sada jako važna zemlja u 21. veku, kao što je bila važna i u mnogim vekovima i milenijuma ranije, da će i upravo kroz oči, pero, Bai Lin videti našu zemlju onakva kakva jeste. Dobrodošla.
Hvala lepo.
Beše jednom jedna zemlja koja je od krune rasla ili padala do gologlavosti. Zemlja koja je samu sebe ugrizla, opsovala, ugušila. Zemlja koja je jednima dala krila da obrazuju ono što nemaju, državu, a sama ih sebi odrezala. Zemlja čiji je ujedinitelj prozvan ugnjetačem, porobljivačem i u kojoj je brat poslušao komšiju i udario na rođenog brata. Beše zemlja čija inicijalna lepota i dobrota, rodoljublje i čovekoljublje behu prepoznati kao takozvani velikosrpski hegemonizam, koji je, rekla bih, ostao i do dana današnjeg. Beše zemlja čijim koncem dobismo i pojam srpske krivice jedinstven u svetu. Zemlja koja je omogućila milost za razvoj i uticaj Kominterne i svih njenih ovdašnjih ogranaka da bi s druge strane pokopala crkvu i silne njene nepobrojane velikodostojnike. Zemlja koja ostade da živi još uvek samo kao rak rana našeg naroda, kao pojam podele bratske, isključivo naše, kao pojam nespoznate istine i kao so koja dosoljava nezarasle otvore na duši, čak i dece koja tek stasavaju, a za koje je još i čuveni Archibald Rice rekao da nam opasan vetar zahvata omladinu i gasi onaj pročišćavajući rodoljubivi plamen. Nemojte mi zameriti sada na tonu kojim započeka ovaj razgovor, dakako nije uobičajen, naprosto na ovu temu, čak ni posle toliko vremena, kao da nismo sposobni da budemo imuni. A možda i ne treba da budemo dok god ne dobijemo odgovore na sva pitanja, ne otvorimo sva dosijeja i dođemo do istine. Međutim, ono zbog čega smo radosni, zbog čega smo ushićeni i što nas raduje i okrepljuje jeste upravo naša današnja gošća iz Pekinga, mlada nezavisna novinarka i spisateljica Bai Lin, čija poseta, slobodno mogu reći, znači simbol prijateljstva naših dveju zemalja i činjenicu da nam u prilog i ne ide baš ova velika jezička barijera da bismo mogli možda i intenzivnije da sarađujemo na ozbiljnom kulturološkom planu, a možda i grešim. A ono što je još interesantnije jeste i njena najnovija knjiga koja nosi naziv Privlačnost, granica, Doživljaj Jugoslavije, koju je sačinila na osnovu višegodišnjeg istraživanja celokupne teritorije o kojoj je danas ovde reč. Dakle, imat ćemo priliku da čujemo šta jedna velika Kina misli o bivšoj Jugoslaviji, najzad i o Srbiji danas. Inače, nekada je bila glavni dopisnik Odeljenja za kulturu pekinških vesti, uglavnom piše kulturne izveštaje i vodi intervjue, razgovarala je čak sa više od 120 pisaca i naučnika u svojoj zemlji i inostranstvu, uključujući dobitnike Nobelove nagrade, Petera Handkea, Aleksejevića, Tokalčuka i Orhana Pamuka. Autorka je knjige Dvojno vreme, razgovori sa zapadnom književnošću, koja se i ovde nalazi pred nama. Nažalost, samo na kineskom jeziku, ali... Draga Bai Lin, dobroveče i dobro nam došla, zaista nam je velika čast. A sad ćeš je ti prevoditi. Kao prvo, nameće se pitanje kada ste se zainteresovali za Jugoslaviju i zašto baš za nju? I šta je bila inicijalna kapisla da se u vama probudi radoznalost za proučavanje i ovih krajeva i ovih ljudi?
So the first question we must ask is when and why exactly did you become interested in Yugoslavia, and what was the initial trigger to awaken your curiosity to get to know people and places more deeply?
Do I have to use? No. Okay. Thank you for your question. As I mentioned, I have written this an introduction in my book, this book on Yugoslavia, and there are actually 3 key moments for me to to keep a deep interest in Yugoslavia.
Češ da prevodiš istovremeno ili kako? Posle, dobro.
Okay.
Napisala sam ovo u mom uvodu u knjizi i postoje 3 ključna momenta koje spominjem da bi upoznao Jugoslaviju dublje.
Okay, and it's like a sort of signal of fate, and the first moment will be in 1997 when I was 10, and at that time I was obsessed with TV series.
To je bio neki signal sudbine. Prvi moment je bio 1997. kada sam imala 10 godina i stalno sam gledala TV serije.
Okay, and at that time, Yugoslavian movies can be very popular in Chinese society, and there are 2 famous movies very popular in our Chinese people. One is Most, and another one is in English, Walter Brani Sarajevo, yeah, of course.
U Kini su bili popularni filmovi iz Jugoslavije i 2 filma koja sam najviše gledala su Most i Walter Brani Sarajevo.
Okay, and I have watched these 2 movies several times, and it's like a miracle because I'm obsessed with, I'm interested in its melodies and its values, especially these values like loyalty, braveness, loyalty, and solidarity, and considerations for others. And I think these values are very important values, merits. But we don't talk about them anymore nowadays. But these values just saw the deep seat in my personalities.
Gledala sam oba filma mnogo puta i ono što me privuklo u tim filmima su melodije i vrednosti kao što su hrabrost i usjedinjenost, i te vrednosti su nešto što je duboko usađeno u moje ličnosti.
Okay. And the second moment will be 2 years later, in 1999, of course, because of Kosovo War, and NATO just bombed the Yugoslavia, bombed Belgrade. And if you know, the Chinese embassy in Belgrade was attacked too. And 3 of our workers died because of that. And the TV broadcast its news around China, and I also heard of the news, and I just read the news on the radio, and then I just go to class to take my mathematics class.
Drugi moment je bio 1999. Tokom rata, kada je NATO bombardovao Srbiju i kineska ambasada je bila bombardovana i 3 naša kineska radnika su poginula i ona je videla te vesti tek pre nego što je trebala da odvede u školu na čas matematike.
And it's very strange moment because at a time before the class began, the teacher just asked a question to pupils. He said, "Do you know what had happened in the world yesterday?" Mm-hmm. And nobody answered that question, and the whole class kept silent. But I raised my hand, and I answered the question. I knew the news is, and I answered the questions, but it still remained silent in classroom, and it's strange and a bit awkward.
I kada je počeo čas, učitelj je pitao da li ko zna šta se dešava u svetu i bila je vladala tišina i ja sam jedina digla ruku i rekla šta se dešava, ali nakon što sam rekao i dalje je vladala tišina i bilo je pomalo čudno.
And because nobody answers the question except me, and suddenly a voice just came arose. He said, "What has this to do? Does this have to do something with us?" Mm-hmm. And the teacher just got a little angry about this question, and he said, "I hope some of you, maybe one day, in 20 years, maybe, you can answer me why it has something to do with us." And that's deeply inspired me and deeply influenced me, that teacher. Yes, that's the second moment.
I jedan neko je pitao kakve ovo veze ima sa nama i učitelj se naljutio i rekao, nadam se da će neko za 20 godina imati odgovor na ovo pitanje kakve ovo veze ima sa nama. I to me je veoma inspirisalo i taj učitelj je jedan od tih momenta koji je jedna od mojih najvećih inspiracija.
Okay, and the third, yes, finally the last moment, maybe even the key point, is in 2016. I was chief correspondent of Peking News at that time, and I had an in-depth conversation, dialogues with Austro writer Peter Handel. We had a very close relation, and he's a good friend. And I think the conversation with Handel just gave me a lot of energy. And if you know his experience, he has traveled 3 times during 1990s, during the war and after the war, to Yugoslavia, and then he just wrote a collection of essays. It's called A Journey to the Rivers, Justice for Serbia. And it's strange because this book, maybe I am the only one Chinese person who read this. It's really strange.
I konačni moment je bio 2016. dok sam bila glavni dopisnik pekinških vesti i inspirisao me razgovor sa Petrom Handelom koji je Hankelom, koji je bio moj prijatelj i on je putovao 3 puta u Jugoslaviju tokom 90-ih i pisao putopise koji se zovu Put do reke i Pravda za Srbiju. I mislim da sam jedina osoba u Kini koja je ikada pročitala te njegove putopise.
And this book, this essays, it's a controversial book, and it has brought him a lot of trouble before the Western press. Yes, and they criticized him because of this book. And I read this book carefully, word by word, sentence by sentence, for about 5 times. Yes, and it inspired me I actually want to take my own foot on Yugoslavia land to experience by myself, because the question here we have to address is not always. I think it's not always the history itself. The only important key point is the idea. I think the idea is the most important thing rather than the history itself.
Njegovi putopisi su bili malo kontroverzni, koji doneli su mu mnogo problema, a i ja sam ih pročitala od reči do reči 5 puta i htela sam sama da odem u te bivše zemlje Jugoslavije, da bih videla svojim očima i da bih se uvjerila da nije istorija najvažnija, nego je ideja to što je najvažnije.
Okay, and this idea can be summarized to one question. I think it's a very difficult question to answer because in a new age of nowadays, in a new age of relying on the website, on the internet to get information, how can we rely on physical experience to get the real truth and speak it bravely? And I think it's a very difficult questions for us to answer because we all just nowadays we sit to internet and to see what had happened in the world, but we don't know actually happened in that land. So taking your own foot on that land can be very important, and Peter Handel could just do that, and I want to follow him. Yeah.
I ta ideja se može svesti na jedno pitanje. Ako danas dobijemo sve svoje informacije sa interneta, zapravo ne znamo šta se stvarno dešava i ja sam htela da idem i da vidim svojim očima šta se tu dešava i da pratim koracima ovog prijatelja.
Odmah se nastavljamo onda u vezi sa tim i na sledeće pitanje. Sa čim ste se konkretno suočili, odnosno obilazeći zemlje bivše republike, na primjer, kako je na jednu te istu priču ili uopšte na priču o Jugoslaviji gledao jedan Hrvat, kako jedan Sloven, najzad kako Srbin, naravno, pored toga je Crnogorac, Makedonac i tako dalje.
So, can you compare some of the stories you dealt with which perhaps had an absolutely different truth in the views and experiences of a Croat compared to a Slovenian, Macedonian, Bosnian, and finally in the views of a Serb?
Okay, thank you. Well, there are different answers towards the same question, actually. The same question is, do you miss Yugoslavia? Yes, that is the most important question for me to ask. Do you miss Yugoslavia to different kinds of people of different countries? So I ask these questions once, again and again.
Postoje drugačiji odgovor na isto pitanje i najvažnije pitanje koje sam svima postavljala je da li vam nedostaje Jugoslavija?
Okay. And, I just tell the story one by one. I know a couple from Split, also Dalmatia of Croatia. A Split, I usually lived in their house, and they are very friendly to me. And this couple from Split told me that they were nostalgic about Yugoslavia because in the old times they have a slaughterhouse, and their business was very good, very well, because their market is so huge. And this market is need for meat, yes. And but after the disintegration, everything changed. They lose their market, and they just closed their slaughterhouse.
Živela sam kod jednog para iz Splita i kod njih oni su rekli da su veoma nostalgični u Jugoslaviji jer su držali su klanicu u Jugoslaviji i veoma dobro im je išao posao zato što je bila velika potreba za mesom i nakon raspada Jugoslavije izgubili su klanicu, izgubili su sve i onda im nedostaje to.
Because as an independent state, Croatia, their goods are not competitive compared with the Western goods. So they lost their market, and also they lose the Yugoslav market. But their goods are not good enough for Western customs to buy. So they lost their jobs. And after 1991, after the independence of Croatia, they just made a living selling tourist goods for a living. It's a very sad story.
Izgubili su jugoslovensko tržište, a njihovo meso nije bilo dobro za zapadno tržište. I nakon 1991. kad je Hrvatska postala nezavisna, prodavali su turističke sitnice i tako su preživljavali.
Yes, and another example will be from Slovenia. A Slovenia political professor, she just told me that it is not important that whether they nostalgic for Yugoslavia or not, because Slovenian people, they thought that what the most important thing, what matters is that Slovenian people need a peaceful life, and they want to get no more unfair treatment. That's her answer.
Jedan profesor politike iz Slovenije je rekla da nije važno da li su nostalgični, jer za Slovence kod njih je najvažniji mir i da ih niko ne tretira nepravedno.
Yes, and the third will be a student of University of Sarajevo, which inspired me most, because this young man Luka, he said he never had any experience of Yugoslavia because he was born in 1997. Yes, but he felt the experience from his parents. That his parents told him that once upon a time they can be easily lived together and be friends without thinking about their ethnic, their language, their religions, and he thinks, well, that could be a paradise.
Najviše me inspirisao student iz Sarajeva, mladić Luka, koji nije imao iskustva jer je u Jugoslaviji je rođen 1997. Ali imao je iskustvo preko roditelja koji su mu rekli koji su mu govorili da se pre moglo lepo izaći i nisu morali da razmišljaju o nikakvim nacionalističkim idejama, i on je pomislio da je to divno i da to zvuči kao raj.
And then he just had a dream. He said, I want to rebuild the cosmopolitan Sarajevo once again by the effort of my generation of young people. So that's he hoped to rebuild a new utopian or a new paradise for Balkan people. But he also feared of many obstacles and difficulties, because he know it is difficult.
I imao je san da sa svojim vršnjacima izgradi novi raj od Sarajeva, novu utopiju, ali se bojao zato što to nije uopšte lako i veoma težak zadatak.
And the last one will be a cleaner, an old man from Tito House in Belgrade. Okay, he is very old man and very tough. Okay, and we used to have long chats, smoking and chatting. Yes, and he was angry about the tendency, about the rush of young people to West world, and to Western Europe. I mean, to the Western Europe these days. But he couldn't stop it. So, but he didn't like this so-called individualistic values. So he said that once in Yugoslavia, solidarity and freedom are not necessarily opposing values.
Poslednje što ću spomenuti je starac iz Titove kuće u Beogradu. Imali smo veoma duge razgovore i bio je besan zbog omladine koje beži iz države na zapad i nisu mu se sviđale neke vrednosti pojedinaca i rekao je da u Jugoslaviji te vrednosti i sloboda nisu bile razdvojene.
Yes.
Da li joj je možda, osim poznanstva sa ljudima, da li su joj možda bili dostupni i arhivi neki ili nešto, bilo kakve dokumente da je možda istraživala i naučno, ili je ova vrsta posete bila samo upoznavanje ljudi, njihovih doživljaja, ili možda...
Did you only come to meet people or did you have access to some archives and documents which you researched?
Da li imala naučni pristup ili samo ovaj socijalni?
Did you have some scientific approach or just a social approach?
I think both. Because before I entered the land of Balkans, I have read a lot of books, definitely. A lot of books, including travelogues, of course, literature, novels, like Ivo Andrić, of course, and Danilo Keys, something like that. And I also read some political essays, some history books, of course. And, I even tried to learn Serbian language because I think language can be a very important gateway to get to know better about the culture. Yes. So, but as a journalist by training, so field work is no problem for me. So I had done lots of interviews with lots of different people from different classes. Yes.
Pa oba, mnogo je čitala putopise i romane i voli Ivo Andrića i Danila Kiša, takođe i mnoge istorijske knjige i čak i probala da nauči srpski jer misli da kroz učenje jezika se najbolje spoznaje kultura jednog naroda, ali i kao novinar joj nije stran rad na terenu i rad sa ljudima, tako da je radila oba.
Da li je možda promenila svoje mišljenje nakon koje je imala pre posete Jugoslaviji, da li je možda razbila neke predrasude ili je samo potvrdila možda viđenje upravo Petera Handkea čim stazama je išla?
Was your opinion changed in some way before you visited the former countries? Did something shatter your preconceptions about Yugoslavia?
Let me think. Actually, it's a positive way. Yes, it's a positive way. Because I just mentioned the young man from Sarajevo, University of Sarajevo. And I think he gave me just a fresh impression of young people of nowadays. I mean, today's Balkans. Because, how to say it? This young man, for example, Luka, he did not hate or try to ignore history. Yes, it's totally different from some kind of people doing that. And instead, and he did not just looking for the West for everything he wants.
Na pozitivan način, spomenula sam studenta iz Sarajeva i on mi je neko sveže viđenje mladih ljudi u našim prostorima. Ovaj mladić nije mrzeo i ignorisao istoriju i niti je gledao ka zapadu za sve rešenja i sve što mu je trebalo.
Okay, and on the contrary, he has an open-minded and independent view of himself and towards the world. So he wanted to, of course, he wanted to go to West to learn, to Vienna, to Rome, to Berlin, to learn things, to learn more knowledge, but not in order to run away from Balkans. Instead, he wants to use this language, to use his knowledge to return to his hometown. Of course, Sarajevo. He wants to return to Sarajevo and build his ideal world. And at a time, nowadays, I'm sure you are very familiar with that tendency because young men like to go to West, to Paris, to Berlin, to London, and they want to try to maybe, generally ignore the history burden. because it's very heavy, and just want to go to the West to maybe have a better life, and compared with them, such young people, I mean Luca, like him, amazed me, because he gave me new hope for the Balkans. I think maybe you or we together we will have a better future if a young man like Luca will be more. Yeah.
I teo je i on da ide na zapad da bi učio, ali ne da pobegne, nego da iskoristi to svoje znanje koje je stekao na zapadu i da se vrati u svoju domovinu i da izgradi od Sarajeva svoj idealni grad. I mladi danas vole da idu u Pariz i u London i da ignorišu svoj teret istorije koji je veoma težak i da odu na zapad da bi svi izgradili svoj bolji život na zapadu. I mladići kao Luka su me zativili, jer da imam više takve omladine kao Luka, živjeli bismo bolji život.
Yes, I think the world belongs to them. Yeah.
A svet pripada na njih.
Okay. Nažalost, nemamo knjigu u rukama sada i ne možemo da je pokažemo našim sugrađanima. Da li nam možete reći zašto ona još uvek nije izašla? O tome smo pričali malo pre ovog razgovora i kako ste je koncipirali, odnosno koje su to teze za koje se zalažete u samoj knjizi?
So we don't have the book right now, so could you tell us why is it not out yet, and how did you conceptualize your book, and what are some of the main topics you explore in your book?
Okay. Yes, I just like I mentioned in the interview, because because our social circumstances, I have go through some how to say it, a review of my book from the authorities. So I have to wait another 2 months for this book to be published. I think you people in Serbia must be familiar with that situation, and I have to wait for another 2 months to have this book published. But besides, for me, the world is about idea. And the problems is about idea. So through my life, I have always been troubled by one question. One question. The question is, how are the boundaries between people be established and broke up? So this is the most difficult questions for me.
Pa knjiga nije izašla zato što vlada Kine mora da pregleda knjigu i mora da sačeka još 2 meseca da bi knjiga bila objavljena zbog cenzure. Najvažnije jedno pitanje koje postavlja u svojoj knjizi je kako se granice između ljudi mogu postavljati i kako se te granice mogu slamaju.
Yes. And around this central question, I just structured the chapters of my book into categories on my I will say just emotional perception of different countries in Balkans. For example, in Slovenia, I will say calm in Slovenia, and a sense of self-division in Croatia, and the feeling of abandonment of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the grievance of Serbia.
Podelio sam svoje poglavlje u kategorije koje su čine na emocionalnu percepciju država, tipa osjećaj tuge u Srbiji i osjećaj I forgot.
What you start from which one to stop you?
In Bosnia.
Okay, the feeling of abandonment of Bosnia.
Osjećaj napuštenosti bosanske.
And the grievance of Serbia.
Da, tuga Srbije.
Yes, and that means, around different perceptions of these different countries, and their feelings of of course, the main question, their feelings of the disintegration of Yugoslavia. Yes.
i sagledam njihova osjećanja o raspadu se Jugoslavije i njihovo osjećanje o Jugoslaviji.
Yes, and I want to talk about other important topics in my book. Besides that important question, I mean, why do you miss Yugoslavia, or how do you feel about this integration of Yugoslavia? Concerns are as follows.
I također druge važne teme, tipa što sam već spomenuo, da li vam nedostaje Jugoslavija i kako se osjećate povodom raspada Jugoslavije. I brige su sljedeće.
Okay, this concerns were about, for example, the different attitudes of people in different countries towards the disintegration of Yugoslavia. The second will be, when someone is nostalgic for Yugoslavia, what are they nostalgic for? And the third will be, when Yugoslavia ceased to exist, how did the different classes of people understand and adapt to this change?
Prva briga je koji su drugačiji stavovi ljudi u drugim državama povodom toga. Drugo, kada se osjećate nostalgični prema Jugoslaviji i zašto se osjećate nostalgični prema Jugoslaviji. I treće, what was the third one?
When Yugoslavia ceased to exist, what did the different classes of people
kada je se Jugoslavija raspala, kako su drugačiji slojevi ljudi prilagodili tom raspadu?
Yes, and the other two questions will be, in the post-Yugoslav era, how can young people understand and digest this historical burden? Mm-hmm. And the last question will be, how ordinary people live a life in different countries today.
Prvo jedno pitanje koje ću postaviti je, nakon Jugoslavije, kako se omladina koja nema znanja o tome nosi sa time, i drugo, kako se obični ljudi nose sa time danas.
Yes.
Okay. Sad sam htjela da govorim na engleskom. Dobro, čuli smo sada i zaključili na osnovu njenog odgovora da je žalosno zapravo spram postojeće situacije, spram razjedinjenja među zemljama regiona, i to baš na osnovu iskustava sa kojima se susretala. A da li ona lično, ne samo na osnovu odgovora koje je dobila putem ove ankete o kojoj smo sada slušali, da li ona lično došla do nekog generalnog, definitivnog, nepokolebljivog zaključka, možda po kojoj ideji je zapravo Jugoslavija nastala, a čijom odgovornošću ili krivicom je, ili po kojoj ideji je ona nestala ili je razbijena.
So I get the feeling that you are someone who is saddened about the situation today and the separation of the countries of the region. Okay. Am I correct that after so much time spent in research, you came to a definite and ironclad conclusion? For example, according to which idea was Yugoslavia created, and thanks to who did such a country disappear?
Well, it's a very sensitive question, okay? Let me think. The idea that all southern Slavic people should unite to form Yugoslavia, a community based on, actually, according to my knowledge, based on common, they unite to form a Yugoslavia community based on the common origins, languages, and cultures, traditions that was understood differently among the different classes that advocates Yugoslavism, we will call them. The idea of creating a united Yugoslavia, actually, according to my knowledge, began in 1830s as the Ilija movement.
Veoma osjetljivo pitanje, ideja da su narodi koji su se našli u osnovu Jugoslavije na osnovu istog kulture, istog jezika. I ideja da o mom znanju o ujedinjenoj Jugoslaviji je započela još 1830-ih.
And this movement actually can be divided into 3 steps. The first one will be, of course, in the 1830s, the Ililia movement, and after 30 years of that, how to say it? I think the father, the priest, in Croatia, Strossmayer, and he just revised the meaning of the Ililia movement to create a more real Yugoslavia. He emphasized the common ground of language and culture.
Ovaj pokret se može podeliti u 3 koraka. Prvi 1830. a sledeći je 30 godina nakon toga kada je sveštenik u Hrvatskoj razgradio ovaj pokret da bi izgradio neku realniju sliku Jugoslavije.
And the third one will be, of course, Serbian people, and there are also different tendencies among Serbian people. One is, of course, they just favored Serbian-centered Yugoslavia, and based on maybe how to say this guy's name, Gali Lenin's, it's a memorandum. And the other tendency will be that there should be a kind of Balkan federal autonomy.
Treća je tendencija srpskog naroda, 2 tendencije. Prva je da su hteli da Srbija bude centar Jugoslavije, a druga tendencija je da se napravi balkanska federalna autonomija.
Yes. And I think just these are the knowledge of history, but whatever this ideology is and whatever the level of acceptance, the first Yugoslavia and the socialist Yugoslavia, they were both experiments in utopian, I think, and it's an experiment in cosmopolitan. And to see if people can of different ethnics, of different languages or religions or religions or traditions could live happily together and without thinking it's a region. So it's like for me it's like a experiment.
Prva Jugoslavija, socijalistička Jugoslavija, je po meni bio neki eksperiment utopije, da se vidi da li ljudi drugih religija, jezika, tradicija mogu da žive zajedno.
But I'm sorry, it's unfortunate that it fell apart. I mean, this experiment has been failed, but and I know the outside world and the West, of course, attributed its force to nationalism, or another reason that ancient Balkan hatred. But I don't think that's true.
Šteta što je eksperiment propao i Zapad je to prepisao nacionalizmu i mržnji između balkanskih naroda, što ja ne verujem da je istina.
First of all, the concept of nationalism is definitely not Balkans, but an imported product, and actually it originated from Germanic culture. But it was not harmful at first. It was used by politicians before it became toxic.
Koncept nacionalizma nije sa Balkana, nego iz nemačke kulture i korišćenje prvo od strane njihovih političara pre nego što je se gledao na loš način.
And second of all, Balkan people are not born with a desire to killing each other. It's definitely it's not true, and they are not want to kill and hate each other. In fact, before the concept of nationalism, people here, I mean, in Balkans live happily together, and for a long time, and without thinking about its ethnic, its language, its religions. Yes, that is the truth. So I think the problem is still political ones, and the politicians just have manipulated ordinary people for their own goods, for their own interests. That's the problem.
Balkanci nisu rođeni sa željom da se ubijaju i ne žele da se mrze niti ubijaju. I pre koncepta nacionalizma živeli su zajedno bez ikakvog razmišljanja o različitim jezicima, o religijama. I problem, ja vidim da je u političarima, i političari manipulišu narod kroz koncept nacionalizma.
Yes, and furthermore, maybe the last reason I think I want to add, because I have to say Yugoslavia's location is a tragedy. Its location is very tragedy. Yes, it's tragedy because it is located between east and west, and like a crossing. So it was of great geopolitical importance for many great countries, and any empire that control it will control the passenger, control the way to Asia.
I lokacija Jugoslavije je veoma bila tragična, pošto se nalazila direktno između istoka i zapada i veoma važno je imala geopolitičku poziciju i onaj ko kontroliše tu poziciju je kontrolisao ceo put do Azije.
Yes.
Jako sam zadovoljna, u stvari radosna što sam čula ovakav odgovor na pitanje i mogu iskreno reći da pogotovo prvi deo, ono što ste na početku rekli u vezi sa konkretno ovim odgovorom, me je sad prilično zainteresovalo da ponovo preslišam, zahvaljujući ovom videozapisu, vaš odgovor i da se malo podrobnije sad posvetim baš tim tezama koje ste i idejama koje ste izložili sada o samom nastanku, idejama nastanka Jugoslavije i tako dalje. A da ne bismo sad išli možda previše u politiziranje, moje pitanje za vas je ko je bila Bai Lin pre Jugoslavije, Bai Lin, a ko je sada? I da li je uopšte na vas, osim Petera Handkea, ovde neko ostavi, susret sa nekim ostavio poseban utisak, na primer možda susret sa Emirom Kusturicom?
So your answer made me very, very happy and made me want to go back and listen to it again. And my question for you was, who was Bai Lin before getting to know Yugoslavia, and who is she today? And did meeting someone change you in some way, for example, meeting Emir Kusturica?
Well, okay. I have to say that all the people I met during my travels made me, yes, of course they made me different. I think they made me becoming more firm and more tenacious. Yes, more strong, more tough, more persistent, I think. And for me, this so-called lost Yugoslav dream, I think, idea represents a faith. A faith is very important, especially nowadays. And, it's like, this Yugoslav dream, like a courage to find a third way, an irrational resistance to both how to say, it's a very long word I want to say, authoritarianism of the East and the corruption of the West. So I think all of the things that happened during my trips are spiritual. They are like spiritual things. So I have a metaphor for this in my book, like the torches of my life. Yes. just set fire something in my life?
Pa svi koje sam upoznao na mojim putovanjima su me promenili i postala sam izdržljivija i upornija i ovaj izgubljeni san Jugoslavije mi uliva veru protiv ne znam ja da kažem riječ na srpskom autori nema veze
Autoritara.
Da, i korupcija zapada i ova putovanja su bila duhovna za mene. Ima metaforu u svojoj knjizi da su to bile neke baklje mog života.
Yes, and you mentioned Emil Kusturica, and I heard he has changed his name. I'm not sure. I just learned from Leonard. Okay, and yes, we Chinese people we see a lot of movies of Kusturica, and we also has published a Chinese version of his biography and his novels in Chinese, and it's bestseller in China. Yes, and his famous movie like Underground. In English, named Underground, Black Cats, White Cats, and some other movies like me. I think I have seen all of Kusturica's movies instead of research or just for fun. Yes, actually, I have met him because of Leonard, but I think 4 years ago at the book fair in Belgrade, and we have very short time for conversation. And at that time I remember that Kusturica is in a situation, I think he's on vacation or something, like his spirit is somewhere else, yes. But he's still very, I think he's stylish, especially like he's very, he just behaves like Kusturica. And yes, and we also take pictures and have chat and even eat. I just know the very funny short stories because I was hungry at that time and he was hungry too, and we will share biscuits of on the one place, and he just took my biscuits. Yes, because he's hungry. I think he's like a child. Yes.
Pa video sam mnogo Kusturicinih filmova i objavio je kinesku verziju svoje autobiografije i mislim da sam pogledao sve njegove filmove kao što su Crni mačka, Bijeli mačor i gledao sam njegove filmove iz zapada, ne za istraživanje, i upoznao sam ga ovde zbog Nenada na sajmu knjiga. I veoma kratak razgovor smo imali, ali on je ponašao se neko kao Kusturica. Imam smiješnu anegdotu da smo i on i ja bili gladni u istom momentu i delili smo i uzela sam neke keksove i on je krenuo da uzima od mene keksove, pošto je on bio gladan.
Yes. Thank you. Pre nego, polako ovim ćemo i završiti razgovor, a htjela bih samo da podsjetim, s početka večeri, Nenad, direktor naš, vas je nazvao Rebekom West 21. veka. Da li se možda na nju ili na nekog drugog ugledate uopšte u svom daljem radu i da li se u vezi sa vašim istraživanjima i dalje zadržavate na ovom terenu? Da li vam je i dalje dovoljno inspirativno da se možda i još podrobnije njime bavite ili idete negde dalje, s obzirom da znamo da ste došli iz Pariza nakon jednomesečne posete i tako dalje?
So Nenad calls you the 21st century Rebecca West. So is there anything you more aspire to do? Do you still consider this region to be highly inspirational, or will you move somewhere else on some other topic, considering you just came here after a 1-month visit to Paris?
Yes. First of all, Rebecca West, of course, one of my favorite writers. He's that kind of writers that I will like because, I think this writer, Rebecca West, also it's a pen name, not her real name. She has delicacy and intuition of a woman, and at the same time, he has the openness and brave of a man, and she just combines these two virtues at the same time. So he says what she thinks, and she never fears judgment.
Rebecca West je jedan od mojih omiljenih pisaca, usput to nije pravo ime, i ima žensku intuiciju i također hrabrost muškarca, i ona kombinuje te dve vrline i ne boji se da kaže ono što zapravo misli.
Mm-hmm. And her famous travelogue book about Balkans, the name is Black Lamb and Grey Falcon. This book is actually a highly subjective travelogue, full of personal impression, I think. But she just dares to express what she thinks, and this book is full of persuasion.
Njeni putopis od Balkana, prevod Crno jagnje, mladi soko, su njeni putopisi, njeni lični utisci, ona iskazuju ono što zapravo misli u tim putopisima.
Yes, and at the same time, another writer, just I mentioned before, Peter Handok, and he is a writer that I respect very much. And when he faced the Yugoslav issue, he dared to write down the real things, the real ideas with his own experience. And he did not fear or care about anything of the media's criticism.
U isto vreme spomenuo sam Petera Handoka, pisac kojeg veoma poštujem i koji se suočio sa problemom Jugoslavije i postavljao se sa pravim idejama kroz sopstveno iskustvo i nije se bojao problema koji će mu nastati od medija.
Yes, and so he is kind of a writer that insisted on his independence, and he just on the defense of conscience and pursued the truth. So I admire that and respect that, and of course I want to be that kind of writer. Yes, and speaking of my plan, just as you mentioned, although my first book, just as I mentioned, it's been censorship now, maybe 2 months, yes. But although my first book on Yugoslavia is still undergoing this review, but I had no intention of stopping this area. Yes.
On je insistirao na svojoj nezavisnosti i tražio je istinu i to poštujem i želim da budem takav pisac. A što se tiče mojih daljih planova, moja prva knjiga se i dalje cenzuriše i čekam njenu objavu, ali nemam nameru da stanem sa ovim prostorima i nameravam da nastavim ovdje.
Yes, actually I have been delayed too much of these 3 years of a pandemic, COVID. So now I need to hurry up. I need to hurry up, yes, and continue my research on Yugoslavia. This time I will travel to Montenegro, North Macedonia, and middle and central and south of Serbia to do more in-depth research, field work, and I will go to visit some monasteries and to see the Middle Ages cultures, of course, and to have more vivid experience and more deep thinking, I think, and yes.
COVID mi je dosta usporio istraživanje i trenutno sad moram da požurim. I planiram da posetim Crnu Goru i Severnu Makedoniju i posle toga ću ići na jug i centar Srbije kako bih dublje istražila kulturu i posetit ću manastire i i upoznaću se sa srednjevekovnom kulturom u Srbiji kako bih imala bolje i dublje razumevanje naroda.
Okay, and at last, for me, Yugoslavia, just as I mentioned, like a revelation of fate to me, like a signal from God, I think. Yes, a bottomless pit. Once you get in, you never want to get out. That's what I'm thinking about this area. So I think this land is worth a lifetime of study. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I will continue to do my other literary interview work, like this book showed. Mm-hmm. I will continue to have literary dialogues with these world's active first-class writers. And this part of work, I think, is a really important supplement for my knowledge and for my vision. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I konačno Jugoslavija za mene bila kao neki signal od Boga, kao rupa od dna, jednom kada se uđe ne može se izaći i ova regija je vredna istraživanja za ceo život. Takođe nastavit ću sa mojim drugim studijama, kao što su razgovori sa piscima, jer mislim da mi to pomaže u daljem razumijevanju.
Dakle, možemo se slobodno radovati ponovo nekom susretu, isto ovde u našem gradu, pretpostavljam.
So we can look forward to another meeting in our town in the future.
Yes, I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Da li neko možda ima pitanja? Ako ne, pre nego što dam neki zaključak ove večeri, pozivam samo da ispratite i naše događaje koji će se održati sutra i prekosutra, potom i u subotu. Sutra će nam gost biti gospodin Vladimir Pištalo. Počeće ciklus predavanja na temu kreativnost i multikulturalnost, Amerika i Srbija. To će biti prvo u nizu njegovih predavanja. Potom ćemo preko sutra u isto vreme, na istom mestu, upriličiti omaž upokojenom pesniku Charlesu Simiću. Pozivamo vas takođe da prisustvujete. A za kraj, evo, da kažem da niko od nas ne zna da li će se nekada kroz istoriju roditi još neka Jugoslavija. Ali ono što moramo da znamo i što moramo učiniti jeste da sabiramo znanja i isključivo na osnovu istine da utvrđujemo kolektivno sećanje, a to danas, zahvaljujući nekolicini vrednih, mladih naučnika i istoričara, jeste moguće. Zašto ovo kažem? Jer samo znanjem, istinom i samopoštovanjem nećemo dozvoliti ponovo pojavu još jedne braće Vukmanovića, no ćemo ispoštovati možda i predlog Milana Vitezovića da se 26. februar uvaži kao dan pomirenja u Srbiji, jer ako se kao narod najzad pomirimo i složimo, onda ćemo se svakako moći pomiriti i složiti i sa celim svetom. Hvala vam na pažnji, očekujemo se i drugom prilikom ovde na istom mestu. Hvala vama.
Thank you.
Thank you.